Have you ever traveled to someplace new? Maybe gone on vacation to the beach or to the mountains. Maybe you moved to a new school or a new job, or moved homes to a new town. Life prompts us into all kinds of new adventures, as in this story, about one of the most infamous characters in all of English and North American folklore, Jack. And in this adventure, Jack is propelled into an entirely new place where anything could happen. There was, once upon a time, a poor widow who had an only son named Jack and a cow, who they named Milky White. And all they had to live on was the milk that cow gave each morning, which they carried into the market and sold. But one morning, Milky White, she gave no milk. "Oh, what shall we do?" cried the widow. Oh, cheer up, Mother. I'll go and get some work somewhere," said Jack. "Oh, we've tried that before, and no one would take you. We must sell Milky White, and with the money start a shop or something." "Oh, all right, Mother. Well, it's market day today, and I'll sell Milky White, and then we'll see what we can do." So he took the cow's halter in hand, and off he started. And he hadn't gone far when he met a strange-looking old man who said to him, "Good morning, Jack." "Oh, good morning to you," said Jack, and wondered how he knew his name. "Well, Jack, where are you off to?" said the old man. "Well, I'm going to market to sell our cow there." "Oh, you look like a smart chap. I wonder if you know how many beans makes 5. 2 in the hand and 1 in your mouth." "Oh, right you are," said the old man. "Oh, here they are, the very beans themselves." And out of his pocket he pulled a number of strange-looking beans. "Well, as you are so sharp," he said, "I don't mind doing a swap with you. Your cow for these beans." "Oh, go along." "Ah, you don't know what these beans are. If you plant them overnight, by morning they grow right up to the sky." "Oh, really? You don't say so." "Yes, that is true. And if it doesn't turn out to be true, you can have your cow right back." "Oh, right," says Jack, and he hands him over Milky White's halter and pockets the beans. Well, back Jack goes home. "Are you back already, Jack?" said his mother. I see you haven't got Milky White, so you sold her. How much did you get for her?" "Oh, you'll never guess, Mother." "Oh, good boy, £5, 10, 15, no, it can't be 20. "I told you couldn't guess." What do you say to these beans?" And he held out his hands with the beans in them. They're magical. Plant them overnight and... "What?" said Jack's mother. "Have you been such a fool, a dolt, as to give away my Milky White, my best milker in the parish, and prime beef to boot, to sell for a paltry set of beans?" And she took the beans and she threw them out the window and gave Jack a whackety-whackety-whackety and sent him off to bed without supper. So Jack, he went to his little room up in the attic, and at last he dropped off to sleep. And when he woke up, the room looked so strange. The sun was shining into part of it, and yet all the rest of it was quite dark and shady. Jack jumped up and dressed himself and went over to the window, and what do you think he saw? Why, the beans that his mother had thrown out the window had landed in the garden and had sprung up into a big beanstalk, which went up until it reached the sky. So the old man had told the truth after all. The beanstalk grew up quite close past Jack's window, so all he had to do was to open up that window and give a jump onto the beanstalk, which ran up like a big ladder. And so Jack climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed until at last he reached the sky. And when he got there, he found a long, broad road was stretching out straight as a dart, and so he walked along. And as he walked along, he walked until he came to a big, tall house. And it was on the doorstep there was a great, big, tall woman. "Oh, good morning, Mum," says Jack, polite-like. "Could you be so kind as to give me some breakfast?" For he hadn't eaten anything, the night before. "Oh, it's breakfast you want, is it?" said the great big tall woman. "Oh, it's breakfast you'll be if you don't run off from here. My man's an ogre, and there's nothing he likes better than boys broiled on toast. You better be moving on, or he'll be coming. Oh, please, Mum, do give me something to eat, Mum. I haven't had anything to eat, really, truly, since yesterday, Mum," says Jack. I may as well be broiled as die of hunger." Well, the ogre's wife was not half so bad after all. So she took Jack into the kitchen and gave him a hunk of bread and some cheese and a jug of milk. But Jack hadn't half finished these when the whole house began to tremble with the noise of someone coming. "Good gracious me, it's my old man," said the ogre's wife. "Oh, what on earth shall I do? Oh, come, quick, jump in here." And she bundled Jack into the oven just as the ogre came in. And he was a big one, to be sure. His belt had 3 cows strung up by the heels, and he unhooked them and threw them down on the table and said, "Here, wife, broil me a couple of these for breakfast." "Ah, what's this I smell? Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." Oh, nonsense. You're dreaming. Perhaps you smell the scraps of that little boy who you liked so much for yesterday's dinner. Here you go. Have a wash, tidy up, and by the time you come back, your breakfast will be ready for you. So off the ogre went. And Jack was just going to jump out of the oven and run away when the old woman told him not to. "No, wait until he's sleeping. He always has a doze after breakfast." Well, the ogre had his breakfast. And after that, he goes to the big chest and takes out a couple of bags of gold, and he sits down and he counts each piece of gold till his head at last begins to nod, and he began to snore. And he snored so loudly the whole house shook. And Jack crept out on tiptoe from his oven, and as he was passing by the ogre, he took one of the bags of gold under his arm, and off he pelters, pat, 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 until he came to the beanstalk, and he threw down the bag of gold, which of course, boom, fell down in his mother's garden. And he climbed down, and he climbed and he climbed until at last he got home, and he told his mother, and he showed her the gold. "Well, Mother, wasn't I right about the beans? They really are magical." So they lived on that bag of gold for some time. But at last they came to the end of it, and Jack made up his mind to try his luck once more at the top of the beanstalk. So one fine morning he rose up early, got onto the beanstalk, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, till at last he came out onto the great road again, and he walked over to that great tall house that he had been to before. Pat, 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 pat. And sure enough, there was the great tall woman standing on the doorstep. "Good morning, Mum. Could you be so kind as to give me something to eat?" "Go away, my boy. Oh, aren't you the youngster who came here before? Do you know that very day my man missed one of his bags of gold?" Oh, that's strange, Mum. I dare say you could tell me. I could tell you something about that, but I'm so hungry I can't speak to it till I have had something to eat. Well, the big tall woman was so curious that she took him in and gave him something to eat, but he had scarcely begun munching on it as slowly as he could when they heard the giant's footstep, and the wife hid Jack away in the oven. And in came the ogre, as he had done before. "Fee, fi, fo, fum!" And he had his breakfast off of 3 broiled oxen. And then he said to his wife, "Wife, bring me the hen that lays the golden eggs." So she brought it. And the ogre said, "Lay." And it laid an egg of solid gold. And then the ogre began to nod his head and to snore till the house shook. And then Jack crept out of the oven on tiptoe, and he caught hold of that golden hen, and just before you could say Jack Robinson, off he ran. But this time, the hen, it gave a cackle. "That tickles," which woke up the ogre, and just as Jack got out of the house, he heard him calling, "Wife, wife, what have you done with my golden hen?" And the wife says, "Why, my dear?" But that was all Jack heard, for he rushed down to the beanstalk, and he climbed down like there was a house on fire. And when he got home, he showed his mother the wonderful hen and said, "Lay to it." And it laid a golden egg, every time he said, "Lay." Well, Jack was not content. So one fine morning he rose up early, and he got to the beanstalk, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed until he got to the top. But this time he knew better than to go straight to the ogre's house. So when he got near it, he waited behind a bush until he saw the ogre's wife come out with a pail to get some water, and then he crept into the house, and he got into the copper, which is a pot, and he shut the copper pot lid cling over himself. And he hadn't been in there long when he heard, just as before, and in came the ogre and his wife. "Fee-fi-fo-fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." "I smell him, wife, I smell him." "Oh, do you, dearie?" said the ogre's wife. "Well, then it's that little rogue who stole your gold and the hen that laid the golden eggs, and he's sure to have gotten in the oven." And they both rushed over to the oven. But Jack wasn't there. "Well, there you go again with your fee-fi-fo-fum. Why, of course, it's the boy you caught last night, and I've just broiled him for your breakfast. How forgetful I am, and how careless of you not to know the difference between live and dead after all these years." So the ogre sat down to breakfast, and he ate it. But every now and then he would murmur, "Well, I could have sworn." And he'd get up and he'd search the larder and the cupboards and everything, only luckily he didn't think of the copper pot with its copper lid. And after breakfast was over, the ogre called out, "Wife, wife, bring me my golden harp." And so she brought the golden harp, and she put it on the table before him. "Sing!" And the golden harp sang most beautifully. And it went on singing until the ogre fell fast asleep and commenced to snoring like thunder. And then Jack lifted up that copper lid very quietly, and he got down like a mouse and crept on his hands and knees till he came to the table, when up he crawled and caught hold of that golden harp, and he dashed off with it towards the door. But the harp called out quite loudly, "Master! Master!" And when the ogre woke up, it was just in time to see Jack running off with his golden harp. Well, Jack ran as fast as he could, and the ogre came running after, boom, 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 and would soon have caught him, only Jack had a start and dodged him a bit, and he knew where he was going. And when he got to the beanstalk, the ogre was not more than 20 yards away when suddenly he saw Jack disappear like. And when he came to the end of the road, he saw Jack underneath, climbing down for dear life. Well, the ogre didn't like trusting himself to such a flimsy ladder, but then he heard the harp cry out, "Master! Master!" And the ogre swung himself down onto the beanstalk, which shook with the weight, and down climbs Jack, and after him, boom, boom, climbed the ogre. Well, by this time, Jack had climbed down, 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 and he was very nearly home. "Mother, mother, bring me the axe, bring me the axe." And his mother came rushing out with the axe in her hand, but when she came to the beanstalk, she stood stock still with fright. for there she saw the ogre, with his legs just through the clouds. But Jack, he jumped down and he got hold of the axe and he gave it a chop at the beanstalk, whoosh, which cut it half in two. Well, the ogre felt the beanstalk shake and quiver, so he stopped to see what was the matter. Then Jack, he gave it another chop, whoosh, with his axe, and the beanstalk was cut in two and began to topple over, and the ogre, he fell down and broke his crown, and the beanstalk came tumbling after. Then Jack showed his mother the golden harp. And what with that, and selling the golden eggs, Jack and his mother became very rich. And he married a great princess, and they lived happily ever after. Adventures in folk and fairy tales often follow a pattern. A hero or a heroine starts out in the place that he or she is known and been used to all their lives, and then suddenly something happens, and it separates them from the world they've always known. They go to a new place where everything is foreign and often dangerous there, and the hero or heroine changes somehow. And then, with a wave of a wand or the fit of a shoe, they return to the ordinary world, but they're not the same person they were when they left. You return as a king, or a princess, or rich, or maybe just rid of your former problems. You can see this structure in this story about Jack. He starts out in his mundane world of poverty, and then he departs for an unknown world, a world up in the clouds full of giants and enchanted objects and treasure. Then he returns to his own home. But his life has changed. In this story, it changes for the better. Now he's rich. You've probably experienced a similar adventure in your own life. We call this pattern of adventure a rite of passage. And we have these throughout our lives, from childhood and even into adulthood. Going to a new school is a rite of passage. Heading off to school for the first time, or going into a new grade, or having a growth spurt. Have you ever grown very quickly? Maybe your voice started changing. Getting a new job. We can see our own adventures in life as Jack tales. Now, you may have caught the reference to a familiar nursery rhyme in the last lines of that version of the story, which goes, "The ogre fell down and broke his crown, and the beanstalk came toppling after." Now notice that the nursery rhyme about Jack and Jill, it's yet another Jack tale. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Now the beanstalk that Jack climbs is a motif. It's a common image in a variety of folk tales. Other motifs in this story are the details about the family being poor and having to sell their cow. Many scholars believe that the beanstalk in Jack and the Beanstalk, and others like it, is a reference to the tree of life, which is an archetypal image. An archetype is a symbol that is found in many places all over the world and has the same meaning from culture to culture. In Hinduism, the tree of life is known as the eternal banyan tree, the Akshayavata. During the Great Flood, it alone reached high above the waters, and the god Krishna, as a baby, rested in its branches. In Islam and Christianity, it is the one tree that God ordered humans not to eat from. And Christianity extends this image into the New Testament when Christ the Immortal is nailed to a tree, marking the cross as a tree that brings eternal life. And in Norse mythology, the story goes like this. In Norse mythology, this world, the world of humanity, is only one of 9 different worlds. There is the world of the giants, of the gods, of frost, and many other things. And joining all of these worlds together is a massive tree, the world tree, Yggdrasil, the Norse tree of life. And Yggdrasil, it grew up out of the center of Midgarth, the world of men, and its trunk, it reaches up out of the ground of the earth that was formed from the flesh of a giant, Ymir. When the god Odin and his brothers fought with Ymir, they killed him, and Ymir's body bled out, and it became the seas. And Odin, he stretched Ymir's skin out across the expanse, and it became the ground, and out of that ground grew Yggdrasil. And around the great tree Yggdrasil, those bones of Ymir became mountains, and Ymir's teeth and jawbones were the stones and rocks on the ground, and Ymir's skull became the dome of the sky. And Odin, he set a little man at each end of that dome of the sky, and Yggdrasil, growing out of that skin of Ymir, out of the ground, Yggdrasil's leaves stretch up high into the heavens, and they brush the dome of that sky, and its roots, the roots of Yggdrasil reach low, and they reach out, and those roots stretch out into these different worlds. You see, like any tree, Yggdrasil, it was thirsty, and the roots of Yggdrasil strained, and they searched until they found 3 sources of water in 3 of these worlds, 3 wells, each in a different world. That first root that Yggdrasil sent out, it stretched and it searched and it reached until it found the well of Udur, the holy well, Udubrunner, the well of the gods, the well that sits in heaven, because in Norse mythology, heaven is not above, it is below. Yggdrasil's roots reached into that well, and this root drank from that well, and after that root had drunk its fill, that root, it started to look around at all that was in that world, and it looked above the well, and there, sitting together, were 3 women. And the first one, she was round, and she was full and wrinkled from smiling, and she was Mama. Udur, Urth, Earth, life, Mother Earth, the oldest of the 3 women. And in her hands, she was spinning something into creation, these cords, these strands of life. She was spinning those threads together, one by one. She was Udur, and she was the first of the ancient women who guard the well of holy water. In Old Norse, she is Udur. In the Old High Germanic language, she is Vurd, or the Word. And in Anglo-Saxon, she is Weird, or in English, Weird. Those of you who know your Shakespeare, weird is another word for fate. And so, Udur, and the other 2 women with her, they are the Fates, and they weave together the destiny of all men and all of the gods, and their threads bind together life and death. And so Udur, the past, spun the threads together, and beside her another girl. She was young and pretty, and she took those threads from Udur, and she, Verdandi, the present, she wound those threads together. She wound and she wound, and when the time was so, she handed the wound threads to a 3rd woman. And that 3rd woman was old and dripping with wrinkles and with laughter, and she cut the threads of life. She is the crone, Skuld. And it is from her, from Skuld, that we now have the word scold, which means a woman with the power to curse, to scold, to scold. And Yggdrasil, that tree, he drank from that well, and that sweet water, it traveled up his trunk and branches and through its leaves, and it falls like dew onto the earth. And the bees of the earth come and they drink that dew, and those bees with that sweet dew in their bellies, they can make that sweet substance, honey. And Yggdrasil, it drank from that well, and it was still thirsty. And in Yggdrasil's thirst, it sent out a second root. And that root, it searched out until the surroundings, they got chilly. And that root, it searched and it poked until the second well, Mimmer's well, the well of understanding, the well of knowledge and wisdom. And that root, it drank and it drank. And the more it drank, the more it was filled with wisdom. And it looked up from where it drank. And it was still thirsty. And so the Yggdrasil tree, it sent down a last, third root, searching and looking. And it felt a cold mist covering over this third world, Niflheim. And it spied a third well. And the ground, it crept along. It was icy cold, but it kept on crawling until, it plunged into that third well, the well Velgrimir. And that root, it drank and it drank, and the water, it was cold. And the water was ancient, because this world of ice, this world of the dead, it was the oldest of all the worlds. And as Yggdrasil set down that thick, deep root into that well, and around that well, it felt a keen little nip at the tip of its root. And it felt another nibble, and then it wasn't a nibbling, it was a gnawing and a grinding, and the root saw there in the well was Nidhogr, the dragon, the great dragon. And all around that well were serpents of every kind, and they snapped and they bit into that root. But the root had set down, and the root craved that water, and so it drank that cool ancient water. And it felt that sting in its tender roots, and as it ached below, it also began to writhe from above, because as the Yggdrasil tree had sent down these roots in search of water, creatures from the world of man took up residence in the leaves and the branches and the limbs of Yggdrasil. A stag, great horns rising high, and 3 of his brothers, they walked among the branches, and they began to tear at the tender leaves. They were so juicy and so fresh. They were filled with that sweet water from the well of Udr, the holy well of the fates, and they were filled with that cool water from Mimmisbrunner, that well of knowledge, and they were tinged with a bitter, ancient liquid from Vilgrimir, the well in the world of ice and death. And they ate those leaves, and they stripped the bark from one of the sides of Yggdrasil, and that tree, it ached. And the tree felt something moving down in the roots, and it traveled up Yggdrasil's trunk. And the tree felt hands clinging to its side. It felt feet gently pressing into its branches as the women of fate, they climbed into the topmost branches of Yggdrasil. And they brought buckets of sweet water from Udrbrunner, and they gathered up the white clay mud that surrounds that well. And the fates, they climbed to the top, and they heaved those buckets, and they poured the cool water and cool mud down Yggdrasil's aching sides and torn shoots, and that holy mud, it healed the tree for a day. And that night, the stags, they kept on eating. They tore into the bark, and they stripped the leaves, and the great eagle perched at the very top of Yggdrasil. It saw all that had happened, and that eagle, it pitied the tree, and it hated its pain. And Ratatoskr, the squirrel, it heard the eagle crying, and it carried those words down the trunk, down through Yggdrasil's roots, until Yggdrasil felt the squirrel pop right down in front of the dragon Nidhogr in the world of the dead. And in between the snapping at the roots, Nidhogr snapped at the squirrel. And the squirrel whispered to Nidhogr what the eagle had said, and Nidhogr snapped, and he griped right back at the eagle. And Ratatoskr, he ran back up the roots and up the trunk and right up to the eagle to tell him what the dragon said. And so all day long, Yggdrasil felt the squirrel running up and down, and he heard heard the eagles lament at the top, and he felt the dragons bite at the root, and he felt the stags tearing, and he felt the cool healing of the water from the fates gift that they day after day poured that mud onto the aching branches, that mud that is so holy that anything that touches that water turns as white as the film inside an eggshell. And so, the world tree, the tree of life, it looked like it was flocked with tender snow. It glowed white from that white mud. And the tree, it grew tall, and it grew wide, and the tree bound all the worlds together. And the tree was good. The presence of a magical tree image throughout folklore, from Jack's beanstalk to the Norse Yggdrasil world tree to the tree of life in Judeo-Christian mythology and others. Well, this has led many scholars to believe that the tree of life and other archetypes are universal and common to the human experience. And other scholars, including Joseph Campbell, believe that the presence of these archetypes is part of what makes classic traditional stories touch us so deeply. When we tap into these images, we are telling a story that already resides deep within us, just as, in many ways, Jack's themes of adventure and possibility and risk are at the root of all our lives. And when we think of trees, we think of the canopy of leaves and branches stretching out above us. Think about how tall they are, the way their limbs branch off. Think of how trees grow like fractals. Each branch is proportionate to every other branch in the large limbs and in the small limbs. And think also about the hidden and much larger system of roots plunging down deep out and beneath our very feet. The roots make life-sustaining connections with the roots of other trees and plants. And when we multiply this image, the tree of life reminds us of the dark forest, made up of lots of trees, which may contribute to how we view the woods, its mystery, its promise, but also its ominousness. Next time, let's go deeper still into the trees and battle other foes as we trek through the woods with Hansel and Gretel.